நான் தமிழ். என்ன செய்ய அந்த காலத்தில் சரியான பிரச்சனைகளுக்கு நாங்கள் முகம் கொடுத்தோம். இந்த இனவாத பிரச்சனைகள் வந்து யுத்தமாக சிங்கள தமிழ் சரியான பிரச்சனைகள் ஆளுகள் துன்பமும் துயரமும் பட்டு கஷ்ட நிலைமைகளில் வாழ்ந்தோம். என்னென்னு கேட்டால் உள்ள காணி சொத்து பத்தெல்லாம் இல்லாமல் போயிட்டு பறிமுதல் போயிட்டு கடைகளும் இல்லாமல் இப்போ காலத்தில் வந்து நாங்கள் இந்த பிரஜாபுரம் நாங்கள் வந்து ஸ்ரீலங்கா இப்போ வந்து பௌத்த நாட்டில் நாங்கள் வந்து தமிழ் சிங்களம் எல்லாம் நல்லா ஒற்றுமையாக அழகாக வாழ்கிறோம். இதுதான் எங்களோட என்னென்னு கேட்டால் இப்போ நிம்மதியாக இருக்கும். எந்த ஒரு மாற்றம் பிரச்சனையும் எதுவுமே இல்லை. இப்போ அழகாக சந்தோஷமாக சிங்கள மக்களும் தமிழ் மக்களும் அழகாக ஒற்றுமையாக எல்லா இன மக்களும் இனவேதங்கள் இல்லாமல் அழகாக வாழ்கிறோம் இலங்கையில்.
This is very familiar phrase to people in Sri Lanka every year in July. There's a lot of talk about this, but we don't know exactly what Black July is. What exactly is Black July? How did it start? We are talking about that in this video. The first incident that led to Black July is death of powerful LTTE leader Sila, who was killed by Sri Lanka army. Then LTT sought their revenge. On 23 July 1983, at around 11:30 p.m., the rebel liberation tigers of Tamil Nadu fired SL army soldiers with automatic weapons and hurled grenades. In the ensuing clash, one officer and 12 soldiers were killed, with 2 more fatally wounded. 13 bodies of army soldiers who were killed from the attack formed the Colombo and they were given army honors by the government. The soldiers' families wanted the bodies handed over to them and to be burned according to tradition. Thousands of people who awaited the arrival of the bodies at the Borala cemetery were angered by the delay, which created a tense atmosphere in the area where angry Sinhalese mobs took to the street. The crowd marched up DS Senanayaka Mawathu to Borala, where they destroyed Tamil stores and set fires any building near Borala Junction that had a Tamil connection. The incident, which occurred in Borala, spread like a fire and saw thousands of Tamil citizens being brutally killed while their houses and shops were robbed and set on fire. Mobs armed with crowbars and kitchen knives roamed the street, attacking and killing Tamils. One of the most notorious incidents of the rioting took place at the Valikanda prison on 25 July. 37 Tamil prisoners, most of them detained under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, were killed by Sinhalese prisoners using knives and clubs. Violence spread Colombo to Negombo, Gol, Kalutora, Kego, Trincomalee, Vaunia and even to Kandy. Many Sinhalese and Muslims saved the lives and properties of Tamils despite the activities of the gangs. Many Tamils were sheltered in government buildings, temples as well as Sinhalese and Muslims houses in the following days. When Sri Lanka gained dominant status in 1948, a majority of government jobs were held by Tamils. Although they were minority of the country's population, elected leaders saw this as a result of British stratagem to control the majority of Sinhalese, and they deemed it a situation that needed correcting. In 1956, the Official Language Act, commonly known as the Sinhala Only Act, was introduced. This new act replaced English with Sinhala as the nation's official language. Protests against Sinhala-only policy by Tamils and by the nation's leftist parties were met with mob violence that eventually escalated into the riots of 1958. In 1958, the Tamil political leadership acquiesced to a formula of Sinhala as the official language, but with the reasonable use of Tamil being allowed. Throughout the 1960s, protests and state repressions in response created further animosity. In 1972, the policy of standardization, which restricted Tamil's entry into universities, the quota affecting political representation, became another case for contention between Sinhalese and Tamil people. There was also a series of ethnic riots in 1977, following the United National Party's coming to power, which further increased honesty. In 1981, the renowned public library in Jaffna was burned down by a violent mob. Until 1983, there were similar incidents of low-level violence between the government and the mushrooming Tamil militant groups. There were many murders, disappearances, and cases of torture attributed to both sides. There are so many adverse consequences arose during the Black July period to the society. The adverse effects of this period have long affected to the society, economy, and cultural sector. The lower level of foreign investment, the decline in tourism, and the decrease in wholesale and retail trading activities in the north and east have all had an impact on the level of job creation. After 1983, the potential for future job creation were further diminished. The economy suffered severely after the war, escalated in 1983, a drop in foreign investment, fall in tourist earning, and growing military spending contributed to the economy setback. Overall, by the earlier 2000s, there were clear signs that the government was finding it increasingly difficult to maintain social welfare spending at a level sufficient to maintain its past achievement in human development. There were cultural vandalism was committed with the burning of the Jaffna Public Library. Tamil cultural and religious figures were defaced and destroyed. The memory of Black July is today deeply embedded in Tamil psyche. The continuation of violence, together with segregation of two communities, led the Tamils to feel that coexistence between two communities had been rendered impossible. In other way, in the North, caste education suffered, but not very much, as a result of war. Tamil demands for a separate state were intensified. That situation was highly affected to the lifestyle of the people. Isolated acts of racism and hatred are still being reported throughout the country, the most recent being the Jaffna University clash, the Athulgam incident, and the Sinhala trend. Although the unrest created by every incident dies down eventually, each time such an incident occurs, we wonder, have we not learned our lesson yet? The incident of Black July have left a negative imprint on our nation, one that we often want to forget or distance ourselves from. As important as that we look to the future and seek to move on, we also need to look back as much as it hurt and keep in mind that the darkness period of our country's history should be remembered, a deterrence against venturing down path of violence.
Racism is one of the main barriers to achieve development in our country. Now it's time to think that we all are brothers and sisters. Among us, no race, only one race, that is human race. As Sri Lankans, we have to move forward without racism to achieve development in our country. Thank you.
Sri Lanka is a beautiful country with a beautiful people. So now the time came to close the door of racism. We have to respect everyone in the country. We are the new generation living in the modern world. So we can develop Sri Lanka as a one country, one nation.